Taylor, tell me a little bit about the Attention Forum and this event, which is all about govern or be governed.
Yeah, happy to. And thanks for joining us at it. Look, we think we're in this pretty unique moment right now where a lot of people around the world spent the last 10 to 20 years really trying to figure out how to govern this new set of digital technologies that we all live with. And for a long time, that was social media, right? Like you've talked about this for years and years yourself and written about it, that with all the benefits of these technologies have also come these real harms that governments have struggled with how to govern. And we think we're in a bit of a different moment now. AI has changed that debate again. The problems are more complicated. They might even be worse. And we have a US government who is kind of pushing back against countries who are trying to regulate and govern. So we wanted to bring the international community of people who are leading these policy efforts and these governance efforts together to try and strategize on how we can handle this moment.
It's really amazing to get all of these people in one room. One of the things that's been remarkable for me being part of this event is that sometimes I feel like I'm talking as a little island, off to the side, and then to see hundreds of people in one space who are all focused on this specific problem.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this moment in time in terms of some of the solutions that have come up at the event?
Well, I think the people in a room together from around the world is what's key to it, that we're all facing the same problems. It can feel in Canada and UK and France and Brazil and Indonesia and Malaysia, all the countries that are dealing with these problems, it can feel like you're isolated and on an island. I know it does in Canada sometimes, right? That our policy debates are all our debates. But to hear that we're all facing almost the exact same problems and that the solutions are in part to act together. And I think there's real power potentially in smaller countries that aren't the US or China, right? In this new digital world, the US and China can do what they want, right? They are going to control in many ways these technologies as they have for the last 20 years. But if you're not the US and China, we probably need to be working together. So that means developing common policies and governance tools, right? So we're asking the same things of these technologies, but it also means building things together. It means coming up with common technologies that we co-develop that are designed to meet what we think are our democratic interests, as opposed to what we're worried about increasingly are the autocratic or liberal interests of the countries that are developing them.
It was really interesting on day one. There was a comment that Canada sometimes can be a wait and see country. And I think this is true when it comes to any type of guardrails around technology.
It has been so far, yeah, and to our detriment, honestly. I mean, we've been very slow to this. When you look at what Europe's done, now what a lot of the global democratic South is doing, they're leapfrogging us, right? Many countries in the world have looked at the things we talked about doing, like our online safety bill, for example. We didn't do it. We didn't actually pass it. And now other countries are using that as a model and passing it themselves. So there are other countries that are using the thought and work we've done in Canada to develop some solutions, but didn't have the political will to pass. And their citizens are now safer than ours on the internet. And it's dispiriting to see that. But again, countries are learning from each other. This is not just a national exercise. So we are part of this bigger conversation globally, and hopefully bringing some of these global figures to Canada will pressure us or shame us or embarrass us into maybe stepping up, right? Like hearing the EU commissioner yesterday describing what Europe is doing and how they view this issue, not just as an issue of speech and of liberty and of personal safety, and all those things are important in their discourse, but of the future of their democracy. Like the starkness with which he put that, I found striking because you don't hear it talked about like that here. But maybe bringing international figures to Canada will force us to think a bit more seriously, frankly, about this challenge.
It's always been something that's puzzled me over the years. I'm thinking back to even covering elections and sort of wondering out loud that many of our political leaders didn't really have a good grasp on how our digital landscape worked. I worry a little bit as we go into this next phase of AI, although I think we're trying here a little bit
Yeah,
harder.
without question.
Which is an amazing thing, I think, for us that we can sort of make up maybe some of that lost time.
Yeah, I'm always nervous to blame politicians' knowledge of tech as the source of the problem. Like, I don't think politicians have a great knowledge of how drugs are developed, yet they regulate the pharmaceutical sector, right? So
Fair,
like
yeah.
we have governments, and I think it matters if our civil service knows these technologies, and I think it matters if the government is consulting with people who understand these technologies or not, right? So I think that matters. But I think more is the issue with the politicians is not their grasp of how a technology technically works or not, but the effect it's having on society. Like, do they understand how citizens view these technologies? Do they understand, and are they listening to the trade-offs of them, right? Because I think there's a risk that politicians, because of who they speak to, because of who has access to them, because of who influences them, that they're hearing one version of this possible future. And one version of AI, if we go to your question around AI, could be amazing, right? Like maybe it is the solution to our productivity problems. Maybe it will bring us closer together, right? Maybe it will turbocharge our economy and our individual productivity and agency in the world. But it could do the opposite, right? And there are people who are already being harmed by this technology. And I think it's incumbent on governments to listen to those people too, and to develop a governance agenda, to come back to the theme of the conference, that balances those two, right? That doesn't just try and turbocharge this sector, but does it in a way that also prioritizes the guardrails that increasingly we know need to be there, right? People are being harmed by this stuff as we speak, and it's incumbent on them to take that seriously.
Tell me a little bit about some of the work that you're doing at the center, because you've been in this space for a long time.
Yeah. We do three things. We run something called the Media Ecosystem Observatory, which studies the information ecosystem. It studies all the ways we as citizens use technologies and all the ways we speak and share information in public about using them. So we try and get a sense of the nature of our democratic discourse and the benefits and harms within it. Then we develop policy based on that. So we do active policy development. We try and research policies that have worked around the world. We study what works and what doesn't, and we try and work with governments to develop research-informed policies based on that knowledge. And then we do things like this event, this podcast. We try and communicate with wide publics. So we run a nonprofit on the side called Paradigms, which leads our public engagement. We produce podcasts, multiple ones. We do big public events, and we do media that tries to communicate what we've learned to as many people as possible.
And there is public interest. I mean, even if I think about your podcast, Machines Like Us, I see it rising up in the tech charts in Canada, often surpassing our podcast.
Well, I was going to say, we've alongside yours. We're chasing. We're chasing.
I don't know about that. But I think there is public interest. And I think that's the one piece, for me at least, if I want to remain optimistic about this whole conversation, is that at the end of the day, especially I've heard these comments during this event, it might be the public who actually pushes everybody in a better direction.
I mean, I think if we go in a better direction, it will only be because of that. And the challenge for us both and anyone trying to communicate this conversation is to do it in a way that resonates with the way people are using and feeling these technologies. And it's not necessarily about policy levers and about big power dynamics between countries and states. It's about how people are living with these technologies. And if to come back to AI, people are in Canada for sure are deeply, deeply worried. 78% of Canadians are worried that AI is going to take their job. If that's not a driving issue for policy and for change, I don't know what will be, right? 80% of parents think AI could harm their kids. These are stark numbers. This wasn't the case with social media. Everyone loved social media, right? And yet there were harms, but now people are really, really skeptical of this thing we're asking them to adopt. And I think it's incumbent on all of us who study it, who understand it, or try to understand it and want to develop solutions for it, to speak with the people who are living with it and find out how they want it to be better.